everybody, Foley here. Welcome to the weekly news recap for the 15th to the 21st of September 2025. So this week there was a SixOne Indie Showcase, 47 indies within 72 minutes. That's a lot of games. I'm more than likely going to forget most of them. Anyway, there was a bit of a pre-show, and I'm not sure if the pre-show includes the 47 indies or if the pre-show has more than 40. Anyway, most of these games are already out. So the Dark Queen of Mortholm is sort of a reverse kind of fantasy game in that you are playing the boss, and there's a hero that keeps showing up in your throne room wanting to fight you, and you beat the shit out of him every time. But there's like a deconstruction of the whole hero premise kind of thing. So it's a bit more of a thinky game rather than an action game. The Girl from Arcania is a top-down kind of Zelda-like, where you have a capybara friend who kind of helps you out. And Detective Dotson has actually been out for a while now, but this is kind of pointing out that there will be a Chapter 2 for Detective Dotson. Detective Dotson is a sort of point-and-click adventure detective game that's set in somewhere in India. I'm not sure where exactly. Blippo Plus is a kind of a weird, as you can see, live action game where you do a lot of like channel surfing of the planet Blippo, I think. And it's sort of piecing together what the culture of Blippo is like. And it's a very experimental kind of game, really. Althea, the Wrath of a Fairy is a kind of like a third-person action-adventure. Looks pretty standard, but the art's quite nice. It's quite vibrant-looking game. As I said, these are all out. Whisper Mountain Outbreak, I think, is in early access. It is a multiplayer roguelike, but also a survival horror. So, like, if you had isometric Resident Evil in pixel art, and, you know, it had multiplayer, basically. That's what Whisper Mountain Outbreak is. Rusty's Retirement is kind of an idle game. It just sits on your desktop, and you can interact with it if you want, but it will do its own thing while you're working, presumably. Just maybe not the best advertisement. Anyway, into the main show. Lucid is kind of a new game that I hadn't seen before. I'm not sure if it had been shown off before. This is billing itself as a Celesteoidvania, which is quite the laudable attempt. So Celeste Metroidvania, but it really has more, as you can see, it does have a lot of Celeste. It has a lot of Hollow Knight, to be honest, because it does have this pogoing thing. Hollow Knight, The Messenger, Bow, Path to Teal Lotus all have these kind of things of staying airborne as long as you can hit something. So that's kind of the deal with this game. Although I just noticed he's got like a big like sheepskin coat, and when he kind of dashes, it like billows out a little bit, so that's a cool little like small animation thing. Anyway, yeah, it looks like it's going to be very fucking hard. So I think this will be more of I will watch people play this. I don't think I have the patience for it. Anyway, it looks pretty cool. That's Lucid. Demon Tides we've seen a few times. Demon Tides is a platformer game where you can kind of mix and match your modes of locomotion, your modes of travel. You can give your character double jumps, or you can give them glides, or you can give them all sorts of different things. Like there's no specific moveset. You can just mix and match as you please. On any journey, again, I think we've seen before, it's sort of a coming of age thing. You've got 3 young children going out to have an adventure. I couldn't really glean any more from that. Mr. Sleepy Man, I think, has a lot of Untitled Goose Game, and a little bit of like Little Gator Game and that kind of thing. So it's really just like a sandbox of you just do stuff. And the gist of Mr. Sleepy Man seems to be that he's supposed to be asleep, but he's not, and he's getting up to mischief, and people are getting pissed off. And I think eventually they just like send him back to bed. And I think part of the sandbox is to just see how long you can piss people off while not being sent back to bed. Plum Road Tea Dream was a very artsy-fartsy thing that honestly went over my head. Adrift is a little bit like top-down Death Stranding in some ways. So you are like a delivery guy in this sort of, not clear if it's post-apocalyptic or if it's just the desert. But you are, moving your cargo from point to point. There's a little bit of like survival to it, and like your fuel and having to rebuild bridges and stuff like that. Um, Not clear if there's anything more to it than that, but it looks nice. Obviously, this will depend massively on how well the car handles. Anyway, Oku reminded me a lot of Okami, and not just because of the title, but the art style is very much, hey, that's okay, look good in Okami, let's just do it again. So Oku is not as Zelda-like, which is what Okami was, but it's more of I guess a walking sim in some ways, but it's also kind of doing like haikus on like various stages of your journey, and I guess has a little bit of like Ghost of Tsushima's thing, where you just pick from a bunch of things that you can see in the environment to make a haiku out of it. But there are some interesting like travel options, as you can see here, and some kind of puzzle options. So like making a circle around those things can make other things appear. The kind of stamina wheel thing here again is very kind of Okami. And there's some puzzling elements to it as well. I'm mostly interested in it because of its art style, to be honest. Colorbound is another one that I hadn't seen before. It is a side-scrolling puzzle platformer type thing, and the kind of gimmick of Colorbound is that you can change the color of things in the world. And this kind of manifests as you being able to change background objects, being able to jump onto this tree, for instance, or get it out of your path in the first place, and that kind of thing. And you can also change the color of your own character, which will let you kind of avoid getting hit by objects and stuff like that. So, it's it looks pretty simple at the beginning anyway. I'd imagine it gets pretty convoluted and complex later on. I want to see if I can find the one where they avoid getting hit, because that was pretty cool. I've gone past it. Yeah, no. I can't jump too far ahead or we'll miss it. Yeah, so there's like orange, and if you make it everything the same color, obviously you aren't able to move anymore, but also the thing isn't able to hurt you. Like it's an interesting concept. Anyway, Chop Shop is not a video game; it's a card game. I'm gonna move out. Crystal Theater of Idols. We have seen this before, but the trailer kind of showed off a few new things. Namely, it has voice acting, which obviously you're not going to be able to hear, but the voice acting sounds pretty good. We still don't really know what the story behind Crystal is, but it does seem to be either demons or vampires or both. But you do seem to have some kind of blood ability that lets you alter these weapons and have them take blood as ammunition and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, the knife doesn't require ammunition, or maybe it does, who knows. But anyway, this is meant to be like a first-person horror type thing, but obviously there's a pretty heavy emphasis on weaponry, so it's not going to be cat and mouse style horror game. Broomstick Exorcist we have again seen before, but it had a bit more of a I don't know, more presentation to it. So it has this like kind of cutscene that gives you an idea of what the game is about, which is kind of sort of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in some ways, but they're ghosts or demons or demon ghosts or something like that, and you beat them up with broomsticks. And that's kind of the gist of it. Again, we'd seen it before. We're just seeing a little bit more of it now. And I think there's a demo available, and I don't think there was a demo beforehand. Oneria was a kind of a strange one because it is a combination 3D and 2D, and then first person and third person games. So I think the majority of the game is going to be in this kind of first person perspective, going around your house and finding things, spooky things. But you will eventually encounter like memories of your past with various family members, and at that point it swaps into a 2D thing, which is a strange one. I don't remember Abashed, so I'm gonna skip it. Dice a Lot is a kind of fantasy combat game, but you roll dice rather than have cards. But it's a similar kind of thing. Recur we've seen before. It's a sort of time rewinding, somewhat like Braid, but a little bit more not depressing. Test Doc of Explorer is like analog horror thing of you have this guy who's definitely not Clippy, taking you through various not horror scenarios. Pigeon a love story is what it sounds like. You're a pigeon, you're looking for love, and the other pigeons don't like you. That's it. Herman and Pig we've seen before. It's sort of almost Pokemon in some ways, but it has a release date now and is out some stage this year. I forget the exact date. Mold Washer is another pixel art power wash simulator. So we have two of them now. A slight interesting change at this one, I guess, is that the dirt, because it's mold, I guess technically it regrows if you don't clean it. If you clean a spot and then don't come back to it or don't get rid of the mold entirely, the mold can regrow, which is different. It's not something that happens about Power Wash Simulator or anything like that. Sheep herds is shepherding. Sheep herding? Dog sheep herd? Anyway, but actually it's not clear if you're controlling both dogs or if it's like a co-op thing. But it's obviously you can have like put cosmetics on the dogs and stuff like that. I think. Oh no, there's multiple dogs there, so it must be a. Yeah, okay, it's a party game. But I didn't quite remember. Gecko Gods, I think, is like a platformer kind of thing. Or you're a gecko? Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like an adventure game. Perfect Tides Station to Station is a sequel to Perfect Tides. It's a point and click, modern day, modern life, kind of slice of life thing in New York City. No Straight Roads 2, also sequel to No Straight Roads. Not familiar with it, but I believe it's a kind of like adventure RPG, but also like rhythm action. Gloomy Juncture is also a kind of puzzle, point and click. There's quite a bit of like live action stuff too, and obviously a lot of rewards. But yeah, it's like a first person kind of puzzle thing. It has a really nice art style. Penguin Colony, because I saw the thumbnail for this before I watched the showcase, and I just saw penguins and then Penguin Colony, and I assumed it was like a penguin management thing. It's not. If anything, it's the thing, and it's just you happen to be around penguins. But there's a kind of, what do they call it? Existential horror element to it. Like in some cases, you're playing humans. I think in another case, you're playing like a disembodied spirit or something that can jump between the penguins, something like that. So it is jumping around in different like timelines and stuff like that. And very like it was in the horror block, so it's very much not like a penguin management sim, which is what I thought it was. Children of Saturn was a live action something, but admittedly I don't quite remember. I think it was like a coming of age thing in a post-apocalypse, and then also live action. Heavy Morning is kind of like a depression simulator in some ways. I was kind of only looking at this because a lot of the imagery is familiar from someone who has and still does deal with depression. But yeah, it's very similar kind of thing, but I don't imagine it's a very long game. Engraving we have seen before, though you may not remember it because its name doesn't really lend itself to the way the game is played. Engraving is a map making game that's like has a bit of horror element to it, a survival horror element to it. But you are stranded on this island. The island rearranges itself at various points in the story, I guess, and it's your job to sort of keep track of the canon shape of the island effectively, so you can figure out how to get from point A to point B when the map rearranges itself. So that's like an interesting concept, and I've not heard of it before. So I think I've said a couple of times on the channel that it's like if you have an interesting concept, I will play your game, especially if it's unique. Gigasword we've seen before. It's out very, very soon. It's a Metroidvania type thing where you have a sword that's very big and very heavy, and there are puzzle elements based around that. Undermire. I don't remember. I think it's a side-scrolling platformer. Could be very wrong. I was very wrong. It seems like it's a first-person dungeon crawler kind of thing. Okay. Okay, like with the Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it. Okay, I didn't remember that one at all. Nocturnal 2 we've seen before. It's a side-scrolling Metroidvania type thing where you were trying to light back up a city, and I guess this guy and other guys like him would prefer you didn't do that. I think God's TV is like Smash TV. Like an arena fighter thing? Maybe not. Maybe it's more of an adventure title. I think it's more of an adventure title. Very colourful. Very colourful. I do remember it actually. It's like, yeah. It also has a bit of a Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it. Fallen Fates. We've only really seen like cutscenes from this before, and then there's a little bit of actual gameplay now. Very small amounts, and it's very quickly cut in between. But it looks really nice, and we'll see how it works out for them. Nanaka, Secret of the Shattering Moon. Oop. 40 fucking something games in 70 minutes. You know, there was a lot of games. I can't say I paid attention to every single one of them. Okay, so it's side-scrolling. It's a side-scrolling platformer thing. Where you maybe have a friend who has abilities or something. Okay, I like the art style, but I confess I don't really remember the game that well. Angeline Era we've seen before. It's kind of a top-down 3D kind of Zelda-like thing. Scrapdackle is a top-down Black Mage pixel art thing. Little Gator Game in the Dark is an expansion to Little Gator Game. You just go underground, but it is effectively Little Gator Game again, but now underground. Lose Lagoon has a little bit of Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley kind of thing to it. You know, it's like a cozy game, but you have a plane and you deliver packages and stuff. Map, a different game about making maps. Not a horror version of engraving. Sort of. And CD Dolorosa was the game they ended with. It's still very early in development, but its art style is really nice. It's got a lot of like Dia de los Muertos kind of vibe to it, or City of the Dead, bit of Grim Fandango kind of thing going on with it. What exactly the game is, I don't know. I think it's kind of like a slice of life thing, but you're in hell, basically. Anyway, so that was the SixOne Showcase. A lot of games there, as you can see on the link. Many of them have demos. If you feel like checking them out, almost all of them are PC, except of course for the card game, which is a literal card game. So that's not on PC. That wasn't the only stuff happening in the updates. So we've gotten somewhat a rumor, but it's somewhat corroborated. The Assassin's Creed Black Flag is getting a remake. That's been a rumor for 2-3 years now at this point, so we've gotten a little bit more info about it. So from Jeux Vidéo magazine, French magazine, received details on this remake from a variety of anonymous sources, and they have broken stories about kind of Ubisoft stuff in general. Seems to be aiming for March of next year, and it's reported that it is Ubisoft Singapore who were working on it. So there's some good news there in that they worked on Black Flag before. Specifically, they worked on the naval battles and just the ship sailing element of the game in the first place, which led them to make Skull and Bones, which is perhaps a less good reason. So that's one thing, and they're getting it's Ubisoft, of course, so they're going to be spreading the pain across various other studios. An interesting thing that was brought up and had a little bit of the video game discourse to it was they're getting rid of many of the present day stuff that hasn't really been a thing since Assassin's Creed 3. So if you haven't played kind of the earlier Assassin's Creed stuff, there were sections of the game where you were outside of the Animus, walking around modern day or like near future, learning about like conspiracies and how the modern day Templars work and how the modern day assassins work and stuff like that. And then they largely just dropped it after Assassin's Creed 3. Like Assassin's Creed Black Flag is Assassin's Creed 4. Um, and they did still have a little bit of it in there, but it was very superfluous, really, and really slowed the game down massively. So while I would prefer that they, went back to the present day, I am one of the people who thinks the present day stuff had promise and they should have stuck with it. And the kind of lip service they have been giving it in more recent games is just pointless. You might as well, pick one, drop it or take it back up again. But what you're doing now is not is making nobody happy, basically. So it does seem like for the remake, at least, they're going to drop some, but not all, of the present day stuff, and they'll be adding more content, more pirate era content, which is when the game took place. So some of it is just picking up plot points and content that was going to be in the original game but was cut for time. So stuff from like Mary Reed, who was a pretty big character in the game, but yeah, definitely later in the game she doesn't really get much happening. But they have confirmed that the remake will have more RPG-like mechanics that are a lot closer to the newer Assassin's Creed, which isn't great because I don't know about you guys, but I kind of hate the RPG stuff ever since they introduced it in Origins. Like, I feel like it has added an unnecessary amount of bloat to the game, and it's also taken the Hidden Blade one-hit kill assassin thing that was the whole like power fantasy of Assassin's Creed in the first place. It's like you had the hidden blade, you could walk up behind the guy, just he's dead. And the RPG stuff kind of got rid of that because you can't walk up as a level 1 assassin up to a level 40 guy and just stab him. No, you're not allowed to do that. Except that was the whole point of the game, so anybody in the crowd could be an assassin. Anyway. But yeah, Ubisoft is still actually to confirm that there is a remake, so all of this could be bullshit. I don't think so, but we'll see. This is going back to an older story. So Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 had a DLC plan where it was going to lock 2 of the vampire classes effectively behind day 1 paid DLC. A lot of people were not happy, myself included, were not happy about that because one of them was a very popular vampire clan. Toreadors are very popular. Anyway, so they've decided that it won't be part of the DLC anymore. So 2 extra clans were going to be coming as Day 1 DLC. However, this was received like a wet fart on a hot Sunday at church. Not very well, basically. So La Sombra and Toreador will now be included in the base game, so you don't have to buy the DLC to get those 2 clans at the beginning. So thanks to our community for the frank feedback on Bloodlines 2. Yeah, thanks, you assholes. And the premium edition. That feedback made it clear La Sombra and Toreador belong in the base game, so that is what we are doing. So the other parts of the DLC are still going to be part of the DLC, which is namely story packs. So there will be post-game. It's not clear when exactly these will be added. It's more of a season pass thing here, where there will be story packs later on after the game has launched, focusing on 2 characters from the main game, not your character, like 2 NPCs, and they'll get their own storyline. So that will still be part of the premium edition, or I imagine a separate purchase if you're more inclined. Middle of September, so we're getting a Game Pass second wave for September, which is pretty good and pretty massive, really. So Blops 7 has its early access. We'll be starting beginning of October. Otherwise, why don't they have any pictures? That's annoying. Anyway, roadcraft, build up stuff, 40 authentic construction vehicles to clear debris. Is that already? Or maybe that was on a different. That might have been on a different. Maybe it was part of Epic. Anyway, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. For the king, you're going to battle against a tyrannical queen. 4 players. Massively popular turn-based roguelike tabletop RPG. You say so. Overthrown. Lift and throw anything as you build and manage your kingdom. This chaotic city builder with 6-player co-op. Okay. Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, I believe, is a day 1 game, and it is effectively Vampire Survivors, but Deep Rock Galactic. Frostpunk 2, again, sequel to Frostpunk. It's a post-apocalyptic snow event, effectively. The Earth has gotten a blizzard, effectively, for a very long time, and you're having to manage the city to deal with that. Wobbly life, open world physics, sandbox thing, sounds like Goat Simulator. Hades, surprised that wasn't already on Game Pass, but Hades really rejuvenated the roguelike genre, and then in some ways people kind of just haven't moved away from it. It's like I think we have enough roguelikes at this point, but Hades 2 is coming out pretty soon, so if you hadn't gotten around to play the original, you'll be able to do it now. Endless Legend, lead your people to victory in an ever-evolving world and strategy game, asymmetric factions. So it's an RTS, but there are also like hero characters or hero units, I guess. Well, maybe a lot of RTS have that, I suppose. Sworn, 1 to 4 player co-op roguelike. As I said, roguelikes everywhere. So it's a fallen Camelot, corrupted Arthur, and his knights combine the strengths of your characters in surprising ways and master abilities. Peppa Pig World Adventures. Well, I don't think that needs any more description. Visions of Mana is a kind of remaster of, or is that the new one? No, I think this is the new one, actually, of the Mana series, which is a very old Square Enix RPG series. It's very good. Lara Croft and the Guardian of Light is the twin stick Lara Croft games, although notably not called Tomb Raider. Sopa, Tale of the Stolen Potato. I think we saw a little bit of this. This is a day 1 thing as well, yeah, in October. It's a very silly visual novel and somewhat platformer game where you're chasing after somebody who has stolen your potato, basically. It's very dumb, but like very endearing. Anyway, that's a lot coming to Game Pass. You have until Thursday to grab 2 free games from the Epic Game Store. So you have Project Winter, which is a survival game. Work with your friends to escape the icy wilderness. Don't get comfortable. Traitors lurk among you. Ready to lie, sabotage, and turn the event to close friends against each other. Who will you trust? Nobody, I guess. That sounds of it. Samaros 2. It's a real story of a space gnome whose dog has been kidnapped by mischievous aliens, set out on a short expedition to rescue the pup, deal with curious strangers, and relax to the soothing music by a guy whose name I will not even attempt to pronounce. Okay, it sounds a bit silly. Maybe a point and click kind of thing. Puzzle game. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you want to play something right now? Well, you have Dying Light, The Beast, which in some ways could be considered Dying Light 3. I think this was meant to be DLC for Dying Light 2, and then they just made it too big, effectively, and they're like, let's just make this its own thing. So that's what they're doing. I think you're playing the protagonist from the first game, who I guess has had a different zombie vampire parkour thing infected into him again. Anyway, from what I've heard, it's fun, even though it tries desperately to be a boring game. which honestly sounds like Dying Light 2 anyway. Anyway, that's Dying Light the Beast. Lego Voyagers is an interesting one. It's a co-op Lego game, but not like the Traveler's Tales type thing. This is more of a kind of cooperative puzzle game. So I believe it is strictly co-op. I don't believe there's a single player element to it. So a bit like kind of the Hazel-like games that are co-op typically, and having to like do Lego stuff, make objects and move things around as you might as a Lego cube guy. what I've heard, it's a lot of fun. Wander Stars, which I think had been on PC before, and I think it's getting a console release now. So this is kind of a turn-based combat thing, very old school anime thing where they, they yell out the name of their attack, but you have to put the name together. So you learn nouns and then add those nouns to your list of things and then make the attack. So you have like super fire kick thing here, and the more you play the game, the more nouns and the more actions and the more things you pick up, which is very silly, but I do like the concept. Arctic Awakening, it's kind of a walking sim in some ways. You have this little AI friend with you, so it's somewhat near future kind of thing. Got this robot guy who follows you around. It's got a little bit of Firewatch to it, but in the Arctic. So I don't really think it's kind of a survival thing. I do think it's more of a walking sim with like survival elements to it. But I liked the concept when I saw it initially, and it's out now, so I'll give it a shot. Strange Antiquities, I think I talked about a while ago. Strange Horticulture was free on the Epic Game Store last week, maybe the week before. But it's a similar idea. You get customers, they come in, they're looking for things, your strange antiquities, and you're going to do your best to match the antiquities to them. They may or may not be cursed. You may or may not be held responsible if you give them a cursed object, and so on. But there's like a lot of puzzle elements too, like figuring out the things they're looking for. And there's an overarching story typically. Henry Halfhead, I think I've been delayed once or twice, but the idea with Henry Halfhead is a little bit Super Mario Odyssey. You jump in, you become different objects, and inhabit those objects to perform like your to-do list in Unfinished. Why do I keep saying Unfinished Swan when I want to say Untitled Goose Game? But it's a similar kind of, a collection of like silly things you can do while going through Henry's life, essentially. Yeah, it's a very silly game. Little Witch in the Woods. I've been following this for a while because it kind of I've been looking for like a cozy game for a while, and this one seemed kind of interesting, and I liked kind of the sense of humor they had when Silksong was announced and it was going to be coming out roughly the same day they were. So there's that kind of element to it, but this has been in development for years, I think, at this point. And anyway, it is as a Stardew Valley type thing, but you're a little witch in the woods, learning how to be a witch, basically. And I think it's very cute. The animations are very nice. Anyway, that I think is on PC only for now. Easy Delivery Company honestly has a little bit of Promise Mascot Agency to it, but it is a Kai truck, Kai, not sure. Done in like PS1 style graphics, but the animations are just so silly. I just love the way he just bombs around. They do like the squish animation for when he's walking and stuff like that. I just think it's really fun and very relaxing. And again, what I've seen from reviews, it is kind of a cozy type thing. You're just taking your cargo from place to place and hitting sick jumps, I guess, along the way. Hopefully not losing any of the cargo while you're doing it. Anyway, that's Easy Delivery Company. And then last one is No, I'm Not a Human. This is sort of reverse Papers, Please, I guess, in some ways, in that you're locked in. There's been a lockdown for whatever reason. There's weird creatures outside, and they keep knocking on your door and they want to come in, and you have to decide if they're allowed in or not, basically. And most of the time you're probably going to say no, because they do not look like humans. And that is kind of the gist of the game. If they do get in, then you have to decide what to do with them when they do get in, and so on. Anyway, so unfortunately, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, video game industry. So Randy Pitchford said something stupid again, so we have to talk about it. So Randy Pitchford says, get a refund from Steam if you aren't happy with Borderlands 4. And I mean, he's not wrong, but not everybody bought it on Steam. And not everybody can get a refund anyway. So Pitchford responds to criticism of Borderlands 4's performance by asking players to get a refund on Steam if they are unhappy with it. So this came about by the kind of response from a lot of PC players who were playing Borderlands 4, dubbing it Stutterlands 4, because of how poorly it runs on some architecture. By the looks of it, is a lot of architecture. Pitchford snapped back to say, code your own engine and show us how it's done. You didn't code your own engine, you're using Unreal Engine. Largely also why it's happening anyway. Gearbox CEO has asked players to get a refund on Steam if they're not happy with the game. This came about from Twitter exchange with another, we assume, player. The Borderland 4 boss has been vocal on social media. Pitcher stated that every PC gamer must accept the reality of the relationship between their hardware and what the software they are running is doing, which is him basically saying that get a better machine if you want Borderlands 4 to run well. More on that in a second. The response to that was not appreciative. And we've talked about this before with hardware becoming more expensive, consoles becoming more expensive, consoles even having their prices put up mid life cycle and so on, more on that later as well, that it becomes more and more important for PC games if they want to reach as many people as they want and need to recoup some of the fucking amount of money that they're expecting to get. They're gonna need to make sure it runs on old PC hardware. Old, it's not really that old, but anyway. Player responded that it's not running 30 FPS on minimum specs and barely reaches 30 FPS on recommended specs. The game provides poor performance unless the player concedes delayed inputs, which is stuff like DLSS and frame generation and stuff like that. And a lot of players don't like it because it makes the game feel laggy. Anyway, Pitchford had to say that if they don't like being told to use DLSS then and don't want to use tools to improve the frame rate, it doesn't, and aren't happy with the frame rate they have, then they should play a different game. Good shit. That's what you want to hear. You've just launched the game, you spent years working on it. Don't play our game. Thanks, Randy. I imagine his PR team fucking despise the guy. But anyway, we were talking about how you need a good machine to run Borderlands 4, and as it turns out, it really doesn't matter if you have a good machine or not, it's going to run badly. So Borderlands 4 is getting lambasted everywhere online for just how poorly it performs for many players on PC. Gearbox put out basically a list of tweaks and things you can make to your settings, but it sort of undermined its point. Their point was basically saying that, oh, you guys just don't have the right settings, basically, to make the game run properly. And the list that they put out for their case is fucking ridiculous. It's like, no, in no way would people have this as like their default kind of stuff. It's a modern AAA game that performs worse than you expect it to given the hardware it's running on. In this case too, the visuals aren't impressive enough to warrant how heavy the game is. Debatable, but okay. Basically the issue here is that it's running worse than most Unreal Engine 5 games do, and there's not really enough going on fidelity wise for that to be the case. So what's going on with Borderlands 4? Is it just poorly optimized? Is it just something else? So Borderlands running on Unreal Engine 5. Unreal Engine 5 itself has become, a bit of a pariah in that kind of thing, in that people aren't optimizing their games and just throwing it at the engine is one way to look at it, and another way to look at it is the engine itself wasn't designed for massive maps. It's designed for interior locations or very small locations, like a first-person shooter. Anyway, then on top of that, there's de novo DRM working at the kernel level, which is going to make your game run even slower. So there's a lot of reasons why there might be a problem with Borderlands 4. But Gearbox's solution to all of that was to basically blame you and tell you to change your settings. So they've released the ideal settings for some of the most popular NVIDIA and AMD GPUs. There are two enormous guides for each GPU brand. You can have a look at two of them here, or one of them rather. So the AMD one, I'm still going. I'm still going. Like, they are huge guides. They are effectively every graphics card, and this is just AMD. But this is the kind of stuff they're talking about. This is a lot of stuff you need to go into to check out. Now, a lot of it is just put everything low, but if you go into like the mid range, it's like tweaking some things to be very high and some things to be still low and a bunch of other stuff. But even with all of that, and it being overkill, and that it also doesn't match the initial settings that Borderlands 4 released ahead of launch, it doesn't match the minimum, doesn't match the recommended, and so on. But on top of that, it still requires DLSS and it still requires frame generation, and still can't hit 60 FPS. So, this proved players' point that Borderlands 4 simply is not optimized. Upscaling is required for almost every single graphic card. Achieving a frame rate beyond 60 FPS requires frame generation. So on console, you're not going to really go past 60 FPS. But PCs, particularly beefy PCs, can manage 100, 120 FPS on modern games, but they're not able to do it on Borderlands 4 unless they use frame generation, which is laggy and kind of defeats the entire purpose of having a better frame rate. So Borderlands 4 is not optimized. That's just the end of it. But this could also just be a case of this is what modern gaming is going to look like from now on. Hopefully not, but there's an argument for it. Moving on. Sony accused of claiming a monopoly on genre conventions in Horizon knockoff lawsuit. So this is coming back to Tencent's Light of Motoram, which looked suspiciously like Horizon Zero Dawn. This is Tencent's basically rebuttal to Sony saying, hey, this is an obvious clone of Horizon, knock it off. Tencent basically saying you don't own post-apocalyptic robot animals, and they do kind of point out a lot of games that already had them before Horizon was a thing. Anyway, so this is the subject of a lawsuit from Sony. They called it a slavish clone of its open world RPG franchise Horizon. And when you look at the two side by side, the comparison, I mean, okay, it was, but also you don't have a monopoly on this kind of thing. Anyway, Tencent is arguing that the PlayStation company is trying to monopolize open world genre conventions. Tencent has filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit, so before it even gets to court or anything like that, they're going to try to get the court to basically say no to the whole thing. They're going to take a well-trodden corner of popular culture and declare it Sony's domain. Sony's complaint tellingly ignores these facts. Instead, it tries to transform ubiquitous genre ingredients into proprietary assets by suing over an unreleased project that merely employs the same time-honored tropes embraced by scores of other games released both before and after Horizon, like Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Far Cry Primal, Far Cry New Dawn, Outer Wilds, Biomutant, and many more. Now, there are like lots of games that have robot animals, robot creatures, and so on that have a post-apocalyptic element and that do both. Enslaved definitely has a lot of Horizon to it. Breath of the Wild, you could maybe argue it doesn't have like the AI element to it, but it does have kind of post-apocalyptic with robot creatures. Far Cry Primal was a bit of a weird pull, but I've never played it, so maybe it does have robot things on it. I don't think so. Far Cry New Dawn, I think that's like the post-nuclear bomb one, which maybe does have that kind of thing. Anyway, the point is, Light of Motoram did look a lot like Horizon Zero Dawn, but also games copy them. Games copy each other constantly. You know, putting a copyright on a concept is not really is not an avenue we should be going down. Anyway, so they're arguing that Horizon isn't as unique as Sony claims. It even points to a statement that Sony themselves made. Guerrilla art director Jan-Bart van Beek, part of Guerrilla, the art director for Horizon, said that the studio itself had its own reservations about the game's originality. This was part of a no-clip documentary on Horizon that they said they were worried that it looked very similar in some ways to Ninja Theory's Enslaved, Odyssey to the West, and I've said that twice now. By the way, we played the game on the channel. There's a full playthrough of it somewhere. If I don't remember to link it, I'm saying it now. Anyway, then on top of that, the game itself isn't actually out yet. It's not scheduled to be out for another 2 years. The game mightn't look like that at all. You know, games change, and they do a lot. So, and not only that, they've scrubbed the Steam page in the first place, and a lot of what's on that there doesn't really look like Horizon anymore. So, yeah, we'll see where they go from this, but this is basically Tencent's position, is you don't own robot dinosaurs. bro. We'll see what the court has to say about that. So another wrinkle on the Steam not safe for work stuff with Visa and MasterCard basically deciding that they're the arbiters of taste. Steam is now blocking not safe for work updates for published adult-only games, according to a raunchy RPG developer. Now, is the RPG raunchy, or is the developer raunchy? It's not clear. But they allege, at least, that Valve is not the problem. So the great dematuring of video games continues. Valve are now forbidding post-launch not safe for work content for games on Steam. And that's strictly speaking not true, but we'll get to the technicality of it in a minute. So Crimson Delight Games, who make Tales of Legendary Lust Aphrodisia, which I think this is a screen from, launched on 15th of September with adult-only content warnings. I'm not sure if they're actually still able to sell the game, but anyway. And they submitted it to Valve's review process in August and had plans to add sexy scenes while working on some DLC for next year. These updates are no longer going to happen due to what they say are global payment networks putting pressure on Valve. The updates will need to be submitted as proper official DLC so that Valve can give them a formal review. So they're not blocking stuff, but they're not allowing you to just update the game, which is something Steam has allowed for a very long time. Even in their FAQ, Steam makes it easy to patch your game or add content at any time that you need to in order to best serve your audience on your schedule. Nothing about having to review it. So we have that additional wrinkle that it's only for not safe for work stuff, that it has to be DLC specifically on the store. It can't just go out as part of a patch or something. We were told all new adult content for our game has to go through DLC, presumably so it can be reviewed and approved. We don't know the inner workings of Valve or Steam, but we're in a couple of not safe for work dev communities, and these new rules were not in place before the Collective Shout uproar and subsequent payment processor censorship. So a reminder who Collective Shout are. They are allegedly the people who kicked all of this off. They're an Australian activist group that pretend to be against the objectification of women, sexualization, that kind of thing, but in reality, they are just the Heritage Foundation in Australia. They're affiliated with conservative groups who campaign against sex work and pornography at large, amongst a great many other women-focused things, like abortion, like body autonomy, that kind of stuff. Anyway, Collective Shout claimed credit for stampeding MasterCard and Visa and others back in July, which is when all of this kind of started. So Valve are reportedly also denying mature games from entering early access for pretty much a similar thing. They have to be able to review it. And since early access gets a lot of updates very quickly, it's kind of a case that like you just won't be able to keep up with it, so you're going to have to just submit the game as is. Though Valve have not made any formal comment on any of these recent events. So we don't necessarily know that's why Valve are doing it, but we can kind of guess that it's because they need to review it ahead of time. Or somebody at Visa and MasterCard need to review it. Don't know why they're in that kind of position, but there we have it. Valve isn't the problem here, which the developer continues. The big credit card companies are, which is true. Like, this wasn't an issue for Valve long before this, and has only started to become an issue because shitheads. Anyway, large finance corporations with no actual mandate to serve the public interest shouldn't play the part of moral sentinel. Agreed. Just why we need to have more payment processors and not leave Visa and MasterCard to be the only game in town, which they are effectively. Moving on, so it's an additional wrinkle in the Subnautica thing. So founders of Subnautica 2 studio Unknown Worlds accuse parent company Krafton of changing story mid-litigation. So reminder on this, Subnautica 2 was aiming to hit early access this year at some point, and it was in the contract with Krafton that if they sold a certain number of games in early access in 2025, they would get a $250 million bonus to spread around the company. And it was then alleged that Krafton didn't want to make that payment and prevented Subnautica from entering early access in 2025 and tried to delay it into 2026, which would mean they wouldn't make that bonus and they wouldn't have to pay. And that's kind of been the crux of the issue. Unknown Worlds are basically saying that Crafton didn't want to pay out the bonus, and Crafton are saying that they were trying to push the game out too early and it wasn't ready and it would hurt the reputation or something. Anyway, so Unknown Worlds have managed to successfully block Crafton's request for a court-ordered protective order, which would basically like freeze the files at Unknown Worlds and this kind of thing. And the court has said no, they don't have to do that. They've claimed the publisher has changed its story mid-litigation about why it fired the founders and seized control over Unknown Worlds. So the complaint concerns a $250 million bonus payout tied to revenue targets for the 2025 early access release of Subnautica 2. Unknown Worlds allege that owners Crafton Inc. sought to avoid paying out by delaying the game using pressure tactics. Crafton, for their part, accused the three former leaders of then threatening to self-publish Subnautica 2, which would take them out of the Crafton publishing agreement, and then Crafton wouldn't get any money, so we're in that position. Anyway, Crafton initially alleged it fired them because of the founders' supposed intention to proceed with a premature release of Subnautica 2. It has now pivoted to a new theory that it admittedly came up with only after the fact that it terminated the founders and seized control because the founders backed up files that they were entitled to access in their work for Unknown World. So it did later come out that they were also going to sue them because they had downloaded a bunch of files that they were fully allowed to do because they were still employees and, effectively owners of Unknown World. And it didn't become illegal until after the fact. Though I really don't think they have a leg there, but anyway, we'll see. The court also seems to agree that they don't. Anyway, to say Crafton's new theory is a Hail Mary would be an understatement, both because the downloads were not wrongful and because Crafton claims not to have learned of them until after it had fired the founders. The downloads cannot have been the actual motivation for termination. So, bit silly for them to change tact, but it was a bit silly for them to not pay the bonus in the first place. Anyway, moving on. So we were talking about console prices going up mid-cycle. Well, they're going up again, this time for the Xbox, and this is like the second time in only a couple of months. So Microsoft is raising the prices of the Xbox lineup of consoles again in the United States, and only the United States, just months after the company announced its previous price increase. Yeah, so we're getting double the price increase for fun. Anyway, it only takes place in the US, and it only impacts the consoles, so the controllers and whatever other accessories won't be affected. But it's a pretty massive jump, and in some ways it's almost making it as expensive as it was when it came out initially. So you're getting $20 for most places, and then, for Xbox Series S is going up $20, Xbox Series X is going up $50, and the 2TB one is going up $70. However, kind of pointed out here, is that when they first launched, the Xbox Series X was $500 and is now going up to $550. It's going up to $600. That's more expensive than when it was initially launched. Okay, and then the Xbox Series S was $300 and is now, even if we go for the lowest one, $400. So more expensive. It's now more expensive than when it launched. Cool. That's good. They were made with careful I'm sure they were careful consideration for your wallet. This is coming after Microsoft's last earnings call, which revealed that quarter revenue increase of 18%, $76.4 billion in increased revenue of last year. And if we look at Xbox just by itself, that has an increased revenue of 13%. So it's not like they're hurting for money. If they would stop plowing all of it into AI, maybe they wouldn't have to raise the prices on all these things. But that's not going to stop them. They want the money that AI isn't making at all. And I don't know when that bubble is going to burst. Be good if it bursts soon. Moving on. So stuff happening in the community. Freshly released The Crew. Fan revival gets early fixes. Devs say they aren't responsible for issues caused by game files from shady sources. So I'm kind of only throwing this one in because The Crew, the original game, was subject of the Stop Killing Games petition. It was the thing that kind of kicked it off, in that Ubisoft were just going to take it down, and you effectively owned an empty CD at that point, or an empty DVD or whatever. You couldn't play the game anymore because they decided to take their servers down. And of course, it's not the only game that's ever done that before, and it kind of got the whole Stop Killing Games thing going. But there is now a fan fix effectively for the crew that does allow you to now play the game. But only if you have a legitimate version of the game. So if you got it from like a pirate site or whatever, it's not going to work. You need to have the OG original one from Steam effectively. But I do think it's interesting that even with the Stop Killing Game stuff going on, fans have been able to kind of like patch it and make it work, which would suggest that Ubisoft were fully capable of doing it themselves when they just didn't want to. So it does add fuel to the idea that this isn't a monumental ask for developers. Now, this is one game. Not every game is developed the exact same way. In fact, if anything, they're all uniquely developed. But, you know, Tony Stark could do this in a cave with a bunch of scraps. You know, why can't Ubisoft pull it off? And then speaking of that petition itself, it is currently working its way through verification, which is them basically saying that all the signatures are real people. And that seems to be the case, that it's like 90-something% are real verified people. So that's working its way through. I think it's still like a month or so away before it'll actually be discussed with the EU or the UN. Somebody? Probably not the UN, probably the EU. Anyway, unfortunately, now we gotta talk about like a really horrible thing. So Sucker Punch studio head comments on firing dev who joked about Charlie Kirk's death. Awesome. Anyway, I not really want to talk about that side of it exactly. We'll go through it anyway, but Ghost of Yota is obviously very close to its release date, and I would imagine Sucker Punch and Sony don't want any PR around this kind of thing happening while the game is very close to development, so they just shit-canned the person, and that was the end of it. I don't agree with the shit-canning, because it's somebody's personal social media account. It shouldn't have any bearing on their work. And they didn't like say anything particularly egregious, honestly. Didn't even particularly reference Charlie Kirk. So anyway, Sony confirmed it had parted ways with employee following a right-wing pressure campaign, and that's what I wanted to talk about, which is the right-wing pressure campaign kind of thing. Anyway, Sucker Punch artist Drew Harrison, 10-year veteran of the studio, wrote, "I hope the shooter's name is Mario so that Luigi knows his bro got his back," which is a really shit joke, but who fucking cares? Anyway, less than 24 hours later, confirmed that they had been fired. Awesome. Why? It has no bearing on their job, and people have said way worse things and not lost their jobs. Anyway, the facts are accurate, yada yada, they don't work there anymore. This was part of Stephen Toto's game file thing, and for his part, he did actually ask, the fuck has this got to do with 10 years of working as a game artist? And no, he didn't say the fuck, he was a little bit more diplomatic. But basically the PR person came in to basically say, we're not talking about that side of the interview, and they just shut the whole thing down. She's like, okay, it really sounds like you guys had no fucking reason to do it. Anyway, so yeah, there's that element to it, but really we're talking about the pressure campaign and how there's a particular side of the games community that go after cultural things and try to get people fired, or try to get games companies and games developers to like change their games based on whatever fucking topic du jour happens to be. Angry internet users, urged on by clout chasing culture warriors, demanding Sony take action against any staff members who may have liked or reposted that comment. Also targeting other companies and their employees over similar things. But this isn't the first time you've had the right-wing apparatus, if you like, levied at video games, you know, and a lot of the time it's just stuff that has queer representation, or stuff that has girl bosses in it, or stuff that changes a male character to a female character, or anything like that, any of that kind of stuff. And you get the same people talking shit about it and trying to get people fired and trying to get, people outed for their political beliefs and what have you. And it's frustrating that a lot of developers kind of bow to it or bend to it. In sort of like, we have another one here from Bethesda that they had. They were promoting the Indiana Jones The Great Circle DLC that's coming out, and there was like a little video thing of Indy petting a kitten. And he said, "You don't care much about these fascists, do you?" Didn't mention Charlie Kirk. Didn't mention the event. Didn't mention the killing, the assassination, whatever way you want to put it. Didn't mention his fans. Didn't mention any of it. No mention at all. And yes, right-wing Charlie Kirk guys coming out of it to say, "Hey, you're making calling us fascists, and that's a terrible thing to do." Yada yada yada. It's like fucking nothing to do with it. But Bethesda took it down. They deleted it. Anyway, Microsoft Gaming employees also have been targeted, including by Elmo. We're aware of the views expressed by a small subset of our employees regarding recent events. A spokesperson was asked, "Has anybody actually lost their job based on this?" Microsoft have not said. But this also goes back to Microsoft targeting people who were promoting, protesting. That's the one. Regarding Israel and Palestine, Israel's genocide, and it's the same kind of thing that this shouldn't affect your job, like your political affiliation shouldn't, if you're not outright besmirching the name, or you haven't called for, like hate speech or whatever. Like, it shouldn't be affecting your job. It shouldn't have anything to do with it. The company shouldn't even know what your social media handle is, anything like that. And yet, it's being weaponized almost overwhelmingly against left or liberal-leaning people. It is quite rare to hear that a right-wing leaning developer or artist or whatever has been taken off the game or fired or whatever. And it's just, I don't know. I just wanted to bring it up because I just think it's shitty, and having companies bow to it is worse. Just complying with bullies, effectively. Anyway, I'm not. I don't think I'm educated enough to talk about it any further than that. Anyway, we'll leave, I guess, Dying Light because it's a bigger game out this week. Anyway, that was your news for the 15th to the 21st of September, 2025. We had the SixOne Indie Showcase. That was a bit long, honestly. Or not long, necessarily. It's just there were too many games, so I just couldn't focus on all of them. We've got a little bit of rumors about Assassin's Creed Black Flag. We'll see what comes of them. Lots of new releases this week. A lot of games there that I'm actually quite interested to play. Maybe not Dying Light the Beast. I don't know. I think I go back and forth on whether or not I actually like Dying Light, to be honest. There's certain aspects of it I like, the parkour stuff. I just think Dying Light 2 took too long to get to the good parts of the game. Anyway. Yeah, industry bullshit. I mean, Randy Pitchford saying stupid shit isn't exactly new. But the idea that, like, they're all full of Randy Pitchford and Gearbox are kind of of the point of view of it's your fault the game is running poorly and not theirs. You need to correct your settings. You need to lower your expectations. You can't expect a quadruple A game to run 60 frames per second on a brand new graphics card. I really think you should be able to expect that anyway, especially if you advertised it that way. The Light of Motoram lawsuit, Tencent and Sony. I mean, when the trailer came out initially, it very much was, is this just Horizon? But as I've said, many game developers copy each other. It happens a lot. The term game clone is a thing because of it. There's a lot of copying going around. It's kind of sort of how art works. And the idea that you can copyright just a concept is a bit not something we want, really. But I guess we'll see what the court thinks of it, and if they think that this is too close of a copy. This is a copy and not a clone, or whatever we want to look at it. Xbox putting up the price of Xboxes again. It's just like they didn't watch the video last week about how you're pricing your own customers out of the market by doing that, especially when you don't need the money. This is purely, this isn't inflation they're dealing with or tariffs they're dealing with. This is just pure profit greed. They just want all of the money, and they assume they'll get away with it because they do. People still buy it. Black Friday soon enough. How many people are going to buy Xboxes? Anyway, yeah, I think that's it from me. So something I was going to say, I don't remember. It's too late. It's too late. It's technically the next day. It's already rolled over to midnight, so I'm going to go. Have a good rest of your day, and talk to you guys next time. Bye.